Hello and welcome to the podcast. I am so thrilled that you're here because you are in for such a treat. I have an amazing guest on the podcast today. She is a dear friend of mine, and I just love so much about what she's doing and so much about her. I am blessed to be able to say I have met this wonderful woman in person, which I feel like is such a treasure now that we know so many people online that I've actually been able to see you, meet you, hug you several
Mhm.
times.
Mhm.
And the latest time was to get your book signed, which is very exciting.
I know.
So I just want to welcome everyone to the podcast. And I want to toss the mic over to my amazing friend and guest, Bec. Bec, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. We're finally doing it.
I feel like it's important to say, like, this is what, try number 3 or something for the
Yeah,
podcast interview, because we had such tech issues and all of this stuff, but it is finally happening.
we're doing it. We're doing it. And I'm so glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, I would love for you to share a little bit about yourself, and whatever you'd like to share is kind of the introduction. I could read your bio and tell
Mhm.
everyone the amazing things that you've done, but I think it's really fun to just hear a little bit about you from you and what you want people to know about you, because there's amazing things and we all wear different hats. So, it's always fun to hear what we choose to introduce ourselves with.
Well, it's funny too, because I think it depends on where we're at, and what's going on and who our listener is. But because you just said this wearing different hats thing, I'm going to take a little bit of a different angle.
Ooh.
So when I first started in, let's say, the personal development space, it was about 10 years ago. I was a new mom. And like a lot of new parents, I felt like largely just totally unprepared. I had no idea what was actually happening. And I was balancing all of these different things. I had a career that I was working really hard in. I was married. I was pregnant and trying to learn as much as I could, and it's just like the normal things that we have to do living on this planet, paying bills, being a friend, being a sister, being this, being that, And I was feeling incredibly alone. And I was racking my brain trying to figure out, I'm like, people have been having babies for years. Like, people have been becoming mothers and people have been having to do this stuff forever. Why do I feel so incredibly alone? And so, to just kind of hit on some of the milestones, we started this kind of like mommy group. And once my son was born, we were getting these women together. And kind of long story short, over the past 10 years, those mommy groups turned into what we then called village meetings, turned into women's retreats, turned into private coaching, turned into me further investing in myself and my personal, and personal development, mental health, emotional health, all of these things. And really led me to this here, where I'm like, I have to write this book. I have to get all of these thoughts that I've had, all of these things that I've experienced into one place so that we can kind of like take it to the next level and share it with even more people. So I guess for the sake of today and just thinking about some of the things that, you and I were talking about, maybe preparing the listener for today is, the world makes us feel like we have to be alone. Like, the world makes us feel like we're out here just doing this and it's totally up to us and our own strength to get all of this stuff done and do all of these things. And it's a lie. It's just not true. Now that the book is done, and we can get into, more details as we go here, but now that the book is done, I've decided to bring these village meetings back, and really focus on this community. Even like you said, being able to actually like us get together, and
Right.
see each other it's so foreign. We've just focused so much on virtual meeting and virtual connection, and it's just not enough. It's just not enough. Like, we really do need each other.
We really do. That was a beautiful story. Thank you so much. I'm recalling when we first met and I was learning about you and what you do in your business, and I was just so amazed. But what I didn't know was that it started with you feeling lonely.
Mm-hmm.
And what I think is so interesting, there's a lot of people who are starting or growing a business listening to this podcast. And I think it's always so important to highlight. We often see people. So if someone goes to your website and sees all these things and they're like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
she's got this, and this, right? And we
Mm-hmm.
think, and I'm guilty of this too. I'm
Same.
pointing all the
I
fingers
know.
at myself, right? And we look at someone and think, oh, they just had it all at once, or they had it all figured out and did it.
Oh, yeah.
But the reality was you created something not necessarily to start a business, but to
Mm-hmm.
fill a need that you had.
Mm-hmm.
And then found that more people have this need and wanted that community. And you just simply answered the question, what do they need next?
Mm-hmm.
And created the next thing. Is that what it feels like? I realize I just simplified that way more than what life actually is, but is that what it feels like?
I think it is what it feels like. And so you and I were at Summit of Greatness this year together, and David Goggins was there.
Right.
And the one thing that he said that really, well, a few things, but something that he said that stuck out to me was, when you're feeling alone in your journey, or you're feeling like you're kind of maybe trailblazing a little bit or going out on your own, you have these people looking at you like, what is she doing? Like, what are you doing? And I don't know if you remember this, but he said, you have to tell yourself, like, I'm not crazy. I'm just not you.
Mm-hmm.
And so it felt a lot like that for me.
Yeah.
I really resonated with that because I couldn't understand why I couldn't get the information that I needed, or why I couldn't get the support that I needed for a lot of the decisions that I was making as a new mother, and, with my family, and more specifically, like my birth choices and things like that. But it felt incredibly lonely, and it blew my mind. Like it blew my mind how somebody could feel so lonely, what was really the most pivotal part of my life. And I did. I just thought, well, if I'm going through this,
Right.
I can't be the only one, but maybe I'm somebody who's, if I'm willing to talk about it, maybe those other people will kind of like come out of the woodwork and be willing to talk about it too. And that's kind of what happened.
I love that. If I'm willing to talk about it, maybe
Mm-hmm.
some other people will be interested in listening or having a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I really want to commend you for doing that in such a pivotal, I can't even talk today, pivotal part of your life of giving birth, right? But we can also
Mm-hmm.
attribute this to I have a client who's popping into my mind right now. And it's because she's a little bit grappling with am I an expert enough to talk about this? And of course, I'm like, heck yeah, you are.
Mm-hmm.
Of course. And it's not just because I believe in her, it's because she's had the lived experience. So
Right.
she is a health coach and helps people who are plant curious, which I think is a great idea. And
Interesting.
right. And so it's the people who are just thinking about maybe eating a plant-based meal once a week or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
They're at that really beginning stage. And she's grappling with that idea of, do I know enough? And I'm coming up with this because, had you stopped and said, but I don't know enough to host
Mm-hmm.
this group,
Mm-hmm.
you wouldn't have what you have today. And I think it's so beautiful that didn't somehow, maybe it did creep into your mind. And maybe that's a great question to ask is did you have those moments of, should I talk about this? Or am I crazy for
Yeah.
talking about this? Did you
Yeah.
grapple with that?
Of course I did. And I had external voices, like literal people in my life, some of the closest people in my life, telling me that I was a fraud, that, how could I possibly help somebody else when my life looked the way it did? I mean, this isn't intrusive, negative self talk. I'm talking people in my life who had the audacity, thinking they were maybe protecting me or something. I'm not really sure what the intent was. Now I'm very aware that that's how spiritual warfare can also present, which is a totally different conversation. But of course, of course I did. And I think it was my own curiosity, I guess. And I just had this like relentless, like, I refuse to let somebody feel like they're alone. Like, I refuse to not do something that if somebody would do like a Google search or whatever,
Mm.
like just to, if they were so lonely and felt the way that I did, I didn't want anybody to have to look as hard or as much or spend as much money or travel as much as I had to find the answers that I was looking for. So I kind of felt like I was like gathering all of this information, and then in these events that I was hosting locally, I was able to kind of like distill it down in a way that that you could understand, right? I would, if I would go to Massachusetts for a week to a retreat center, I could kind of like bring back the highlights of that and pour it back into the people that I was with.
That's beautiful. It's so nice.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's a true testament to who you are. But I think it comes back to, we talk about a lot of tactical things here on the podcast, and
Hmm.
because that is one of the gifts I have, is to distill something down, kind of like you're talking about, but really make it concrete in terms of tactical things. And so when we think about goals, and
Hmm.
I interview so many people and I talk to so many people, and I have always been curious, what is the thing that is about the people who achieve their goals versus the ones that don't? And it's just been a curiosity, like you said. I'm just curious. So I just ask all these questions. And inevitably, they all have a very strong why.
Hmm.
And it feels so vague when I tell that to someone. I'm like, I need to know your why. I need to understand why you care about this. But you
Hmm.
just brought it up. You said, I didn't want anyone
Hmm.
else to have to search as hard or travel as much or pay as
Yeah.
much as I did to get
Hmm.
the answer. And
Hmm.
that kept you going. It kept you moving through external voices,
Hmm.
internal voices, and anything else that kind of got in your way. I
Hmm.
think that really carried you. Do you agree?
I do. I think that, and I have two children now. My first was my son, Arlen, and then Eva, my daughter. And they're going to be parents one day, and they're going to be young adults one day. Just nobody should feel this way, right? So it's like, I know that any work that I do for myself, anything that I do to better myself, will have that direct increase in abundance, health, whatever it is for my children. So in my book, there's a line where I say something like, as a mother, giving up was not one of my options.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it just viscerally was not an option. So between wanting to really serve other people with all of this information that I was finding, and just really clinging to what I felt like God had put on my heart to do, like those things kind of worked hand in hand. It was just like, it feels like a duty. It feels like I can't get away from it in the best way. You know what I mean?
Right. I love that. And the idea of thinking about it like I can't get away from it. And I'm reflecting on my own experience and thinking, like, what can I not get away from
Hmm.
talking about? And it's helping people follow through and achieve what they actually
Hmm.
want, like come hell or high water,
Yeah,
right?
that's
It's like,
you.
yes. And it's like, I will be the best person on your side
Hmm.
when you're ready to do that. And it's funny because even if I didn't have this podcast, even if I didn't have this business,
Hmm.
I still did it before I had a business,
Right.
and it's
And most
funny.
people do, right? It's like, yeah,
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 it's
that's
the
great.
thing that you can't get away from. I love it
Hmm.
in the
Hmm.
best way.
Hmm.
It's awesome. Well,
Yeah.
one of the things in your book that I think, and we're leading right into it because we're talking about following through when things feel really difficult, which
Hmm.
is just part of the entrepreneurial journey. It's part of life,
Yeah,
like the whole life journey, I think.
I think
And
so.
right. And
I
you
think
have
so.
something in, and I'm looking for where I bookmarked this, my like earmarked pages here. And you call it the liminal advantage. And
Hmm.
this really was interesting to me as I dug into this. And there's a quote. This, I will probably be the one person who points out this quote, but I hope that everyone hears it loud and clear. And in the first part of this chapter, you say, what good was going to come from staying stuck?
Hmm.
And when I read that sentence, I thought, oh my gosh, I need everyone to think about it in that way, because no matter what we're stuck with in terms of a life situation, I can't get past this revenue goal, or I can't seem to bust down this wall
Hmm.
emotionally or through a business thing, whatever it is, wherever we're feeling stuck, I love asking ourselves that question:
Hmm.
what good is it staying stuck? So,
Hmm.
what would you like to share with that if someone is feeling stuck today?
Yeah. So can I back up and explain the liminal advantage,
Sure,
like
sure,
what
sure,
this
sure.
is? Okay.
Yeah,
So for context, for people who don't have the book, haven't read the book yet, I really share lots of my divorce testimony. Okay. So as I was going through therapy post divorce, my therapist gave me this word that I'd never heard before. So she started talking to me about this thing called liminal space. Because, and a lot of people feel this way, right? It's like, I know that one chapter of my life was over, but, and I knew another chapter would begin, but I was like in this weird space. I was like, why
right.
does this feel so weird? Like, I can't really see the light at the end of the tunnel. I don't really know which way I'm going. It's like, it's just this weird suspended reality, that we experience. And she was like, that's called liminal space.
Don't
And
you
I'm
love
like,
it when they have a word for it and you're like, oh,
I
someone
was
else
like,
has experienced this too?
exactly. I was like, okay. So I started looking into this term liminal space and I write about this. And everything that I was finding was negative. It was like, okay, this is when you have an existential crisis. This is when you have, a nervous breakdown. This is when you're super anxious and depressed. This is when you curl up in the corner and just like want to totally give up. And I did feel all of those things, trust me. But then it got to the point that you're talking about where I'm like, what good would this be if I just stay stuck? And everyone around me, the people in my close environment, they would have totally supported. And think about this, if you're listening and you're in the middle of something right now, you're in between, as a single mom, just getting divorced, unemployed, it's the pandemic, right? Like insert all of your variables. My whole world around me would have been totally fine with me taking years, Amanda, years to recuperate. Nobody would have said, Becca, move a little faster. Like, why are you taking so long? If I wanted to sit and cry or never go back to work, or whatever, they would have just been like, yeah, divorce is hard.
Right.
It's tough. We're just going to kind of let her be. And I didn't really have anyone in my corner reminding me how powerful I am and how much potential that I had. And, that I had been doing all of these things leading up to this that really felt like were ripped right out from underneath me, on top of the pandemic that everybody was feeling pressure from. So when I learned this term liminal advantage or liminal space, you're right. It made me feel less alone because I'm like, if there's a name to this thing, other people are going through this thing and I can get through this. And then I started to get excited because I'm like, oh my gosh, if I'm in between past and a future that I'm not really sure about, this can be like kind of fun. This can be like I can create whatever I want to create. I'm not defined anymore by all of this mess that used to be my life. And I can really get specific and choose. I can really play in the energy of like, what's next?
Hmm.
So as we started writing, as I started writing the book last year with story builders, we were kind of brainstorming about how to describe this feeling of, instead of looking back on everything that's happened to you and feeling bad about it, or, you know, making excuses and claiming victimhood, I was like, man, I am the only one who has been through everything that I've gone through, like on this planet forever, in like
Hmm.
since the beginning of time till the end of time. Like, no one's going to live the same life that I have. And that's the same for everybody, right? Like, no one is ever going to have every single experience that you've had. And that's what makes you so unique. That's what makes you special. That's what makes your future so perfect for you. So, this liminal advantage is this advantage that we all have in these liminal spaces that is really like evidence that we're perfectly positioned for our next move. So instead of us feeling like, oh man, this terrible thing just happened to me, like whether, and it could be a bad thing, maybe you lose your job, you get laid off, there's an unexpected, my divorce was not expected. It was like, he came home one day and was like, we need a divorce. I'm like, all right. Like this was not something that I had time to prepare for. You know what I mean? And a lot of the times, to your point, see people's outward appearance, or we make assumptions about what people have and how they got there. And just is kind of like, it's just not productive, when we need to really just be focusing on where we're at and what we're doing and how we can become better and leverage everything that's ever happened to us, people say for us, so that we can make the next few decisions that could really like totally change our life. So if somebody's feeling stuck right now, what I would say is, are you really? Like, are you really stuck? Or is that just the vocabulary that you have? And is that just what your environment is enabling you to believe? Because I felt really stuck, but then I was just like, how can I be stuck when I have literally just like wide open doors in front of me? Like I can do whatever. I had no path or no direction or no plan, which can feel really scary. But if you flip that perspective, it's like, oh my gosh, I can do anything, like I can do anything. What's next? Like, let's go.
You're amazing. I'm so glad to call you one of my friends. I just love this so much. I love how you just shared. Thank you for all of that, by the way.
Yeah.
The
I'm
idea of
long-winded.
like,
I go on tangents.
bring it on. That's what this podcast is all about. I love it because I'm a curious person. And I, like I said, like I always want to gather, and give of like just like you did.
Yeah.
You want to gather this information and give it out to people who need it. And so me asking you, how did you get unstuck? How are you achieving these things, even in the middle of what some would say is chaos or crisis or whatever the case is? And it's your perspective is so different on it. And when you were like, is someone really stuck? And I would almost like what came to my mind when you were saying that is, are you stuck or are you scared? Because you saying that of, it is certainly scary when you're like, yes, I have these opportunities that the doors are open. And I would also say there are times in our life that it feels like every door is shut. Like I know that those feelings are there, but the reality is asking yourself, but what are the ones that are open? Even if it's just a little sliver, but you have to go push that door and open it yourself because it feels like it's shut. And I love that idea of just asking the next time someone is feeling stuck and it's like, am I stuck or am I scared? Because I think that'll really change the game for a lot of people.
Yeah, I agree. And that's like the whole faith over fear thing, that I've had going on for a while, because I think that, I think you nailed it. I think that's so true. I think we have a limited scope a lot of the times. I think that like what you don't know, and that's okay. But I think a lot of the times we feel stuck because we don't spend time to actually look around. We get so close-minded, we get such tunnel vision. And in the book too, I write about Abraham Maslow's work, who was a psychologist, and many of us know his hierarchy of needs. And I've been just totally fascinated with his work since I was in like high school. And this stuff is real. We live on this planet where we have bills to pay, and we have relationships to maintain, and we have these obligations to people because we told them that we would do it and whatever. But we change, we evolve constantly. And some of us move faster than others. Our growth is more accelerated. But regardless, you will change and you will evolve, and things will happen to you. You will create things that will, change your life. And I think that if we don't really get into who we are and why, which is why the book is titled Rediscover Yourself, Redefine Your Life, we can fall into this trap where we're living a life that suited a past version of ourselves, and we're not really sure why we're unhappy. So kind of like looping this back to, are you stuck or are you scared? I think we are all required to step out in faith a lot of the times. You're talking about this metaphor with the doors, and I mean, I feel like I have had to like kick down doors.
Yes.
It's not just like none of my doors have just been like wide open. It's not just like I woke up one day and it was like, oh, here's all this money, or here's this job, or here's this thing. It's like I feel like I've had to like, I don't even know how to like explain it, but it's taken a lot of effort and a lot of strategy and a lot of awareness to be like, man, I don't like where I am right now. And like, I have to kick down this door, because the other thing, right? And this is like, I really do believe when we're on the cusp of something really big and pivotal and life changing, there is so much resistance around us sometimes that I think we expect it to always be so effortless. And I do think that God rewards us with a lot of things that feel very effortless, that are kind of like, yeah, like a reward, But leading up to that, it's just not always easy. And I think people are stuck, they're scared, and maybe a little unwilling to do what it takes. So sometimes you have to like really go hard, like you have to be this. I went on this tangent 2 years ago about relentlessly pursuing yourself. Like that was the word that I used, relentlessly. Like no matter what, just going after it. And I don't know that everybody's willing to do that, because I don't think that they know how deserving they are to do that for themselves.
That's a big one.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also reading Jamie Kern Lima's book, Worthy. I don't know if you've read that book. It's
No,
such a
but
good
I've
one.
been hearing great things about it.
It's wonderful. And what you just said is what she talks about is feeling worthy of whatever they're going for. And if you don't feel worthy, it's either not going to happen or you're not going to be fulfilled when you get it. Butchering her book right now, but basically,
No, I think that sounds great.
feeling the worthiness of it. And I think there's a lot to unpack there. Of course, I am not a therapist. This is not a therapist podcast, but there's a lot to take to a therapist and say, hey, I need to unpack this because I don't feel worthy of, and I specifically work with a lot of women, you do too, and I'm certain that you've run into this at some point, is the, money and women, and that mindset of, am I worthy of making more money than I'm making right now? That whole thing comes into play. And we have to tap into, yes, because I am hoping, like, this is what I'm called to do. And it's okay to make money. Money is neutral. We need it in life. Going back to Maslow, we need money to live.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I heard somebody say before that like money just magnifies who you are. It's like, I don't know who to credit with that, but if a good person gets a lot of money, they're probably going to do good things with it,
right?
And vice versa, but I've absolutely seen that play out. And I had to move through it myself, growing up in a very small town where, the average income is not very high, and it's just not something that's safe to talk about. It's not a safe conversation. And I'm a very avid Christian. And so, in some Christian communities, you hear the messaging of, you should be just extremely grateful for everything you have, and almost equating this like poverty mindset to some kind of like special honor, or something. And I can't figure it out, because like I have bills to pay, and I can't pray my lights on, you know what I mean?
No.
Like the dream, like the goals that God has put on my heart require money. So I just don't know how I can feel bad about earning it anymore. But that's after like a lot of work and unpacking, like, why do I feel this way? Why do I think that money's bad? Or just not really knowing how to handle money, or hold on to money, So I think it's a really, I mean, it's a crucial part of life, and you can choose to struggle or you can choose to not. But I think that's what it comes down to with where we're going today and what we're talking about today is like, what are you actually choosing? Because even if you're stuck, you're kind of choosing to be there. I could have chosen to stay stuck. And my therapist had to like beat that into my head, you know, days where I was giving myself a hard time. She's like, Becca, I work with a lot of women in your same situation, and many of them are not taking the action that you are. Many of them are not bouncing back the way that you have, you know, so you need to give yourself some credit that you're making very good decisions here for you and your family, you know, in your future. But also there's a lot of, trust me when I say that God has had to clean up a lot of my mess. And there's been plenty of favor, you know, that I'm well aware of. But I think we can choose to step into that or not. So.
Yeah, I love what you're saying is, you know, and I don't know who to credit with this, but I say it all the time. Like, we choose our own hard.
Mm-hmm.
Working for someone else, hard. Running a business, hard.
Mm-hmm.
You know, being a good friend, wife, spouse, whatever it is. It's like, it's all hard. We choose our hard. And when we choose that hard, we need to use one of your words, is to be relentless with that pursuit of whatever that hard is. And that's the thing that I find, you know, I keep asking people, like, and trying to understand what makes people follow through and what makes people not. And it's that pushing through the hard. And knowing your why helps you push through the hard, but it's really that pushing through. And so no matter what someone is facing today, where they're feeling stuck, probably just scared, but they're feeling stuck and they're trying to reach that goal, whatever that goal is. A lot of people want to write and finish their book. So you're an author. I'm an author. I talk about this all the time. And it's like, that is not an easy thing to finish. That is not an easy thing to do.
Having like PTSD over here.
I know, we're both sweating. I remember it. Like, it's not easy. It's not like, I feel like people have this picturesque, and no matter what it is, we can talk about the book one, but it's like people think, oh, they just go away in this cabin.
Oh, seriously. That's what I was just going to think. It's like you go away to the cabin, you have your coffee and your tea, and you're getting waited on, and, you know, it's just pouring out of you.
Right.
And you just write 40,000 words in a weekend.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
If that's happened to you, please come on the podcast, because I'd love to talk to you. Not one single author I've ever talked to has ever said that that happened. But no matter what the goal is, growing the business, starting the business, writing the book, starting the podcast, all these different things that I've, you know, paying off debt, like all of these things that I've worked with clients, you've done the same, of like hitting that milestone that they want. When they're feeling that stuck feeling, that scared feeling, how would you suggest that they gain momentum? Because most people are feeling very stagnant.
Yep.
And they want to start moving, and they're paralyzed either where to go or how to start. What would you suggest in those moments?
So the subtitle of the book is A Guide to Creating Confidence and Finding Fulfillment. And what I mean by confidence, I break down these 5 different types of confidence in the book. But that's what I think is holding people back from taking action. They're not confident in the step that they need to take. So what I would say is, whatever it is that you're pondering, like whatever it is that you're considering, take time to learn about it. And today, like, there's no reason why you can't. There's YouTube videos, there's free everything, you know, there's ways to reach people and end up connecting with people that we never had the ability to, our parents, our grandparents never had the ability to do. So I think what makes me a confident, like, action taker is that I do as much research as I feel like I need to, not to the point that it's
analysis paralysis.
Exactly. I get to the point that I'm like, okay, I think I have enough of what I need. I'm just going to go for it. And then if I do it over and over and over again, I'm either going to become more confident, or I'm going to realize that this probably isn't, you know, what I need to do. But I think most people, their fear of not moving forward is because they have a lack of understanding. So I think at my core, I try to be an educator, you know, around these things, never really telling somebody exactly what to do, but giving them enough information, that maybe they otherwise wouldn't have. And then they can make a more confident step forward, even if it's a baby step, because it's those little wins, that's going to start to build that momentum.
Love
So,
it.
yeah, I would say learn. Don't put the pressure on being like, tomorrow I'm going to start a multi-million-dollar business. Because that's what everybody thinks they see. But it's like, hey, maybe I need to go. At the beginning of all of this, I was waitressing, I was bartending, I was working in retail, I was working at a hotel front desk. I took a job in oil and gas that I had no idea what that was. And I just was always open, to the next opportunity and always willing to take it. So, yeah, you don't just wake up one day and have this thing built. So you have to really find, I hate to sound cliche, but learning is part of that process. And falling in love with that part is, I think, what's so important. Because once you get the thing, it's really it's like we were talking about it with the book. It's
Right.
it's hard to celebrate because when you're working so hard towards it, what do you expect's going to happen? But the opposite is also true. If you're not doing anything, if I just didn't write consecutively for 58 weeks or however long it was, and I woke up a year and a few months later and I was like, I am so mad that I don't have a book. How can I, what? And this is what we're doing, right? We're
Right.
like, I'm so mad that I don't have this money. I'm so mad I don't have this book. But if you do the opposite, if you save $100 a week, if you write a few paragraphs a day, if you make a phone call to a personal trainer and you get into the gym 2 days a week and then 3 and 4 and then, 6 and whatever, it's impossible for you to not experience a result. And that's what people don't like to look at. They'd rather look at the flip side of it. So I'm over here just if I just move the needle a tiny little bit, but I move it all at once across different aspects of my life, it is impossible for me to not experience a result.
Yeah, I'm with you 100% on this. It's impossible. I talk to people all the time and say if they're asking about how to do something in their business, I'm like, what is that transformation that you're helping people with? And I often reflect on my own of I cannot promise. I can never promise someone that they will achieve their goal exactly as they have it written down.
Right.
I cannot do that. They usually have a time frame that's unrealistic, and I just can't. But I can promise with 100% certainty that if they keep going and take action, they will see progress. And like you said, it's impossible not to see a result. It's absolutely impossible. I love that you said it like that because it's so true that we often get stuck because and I want to bring something back to what you said, which is so good, is you said people need to have confidence in the action. What a lot of people probably heard, because a lot of people struggle with this, is self-confidence in themselves. The confidence in yourself doesn't come before the action. The action has to happen first. But what you said was confidence in the action. Like this is the next thing I need to do. It's confidence in I'm going to do this thing. Whether you do it well or not is almost irrelevant.
Exactly.
So great distinction there.
Yeah. And then when you create, I think Alex Hormozy says something along the lines of you're collecting more evidence of who you say you are. People who are stuck, people who are afraid, people who are insecure, and we ebb and flow in and out of these feelings. If I'm insecure somewhere, it's because I haven't stacked enough wins. I haven't proven yet to myself that I am who I say I am. And if I'm self-aware enough to see that, then I can either choose to abandon that part of myself, not in a negative way, but I can choose to release that, or I can hunker down more. And that's kind of, using the book as a very tangible example. It's I've always wanted to write a book and I talked about it for years and I got sick and tired of hearing myself talk about it. Right. And then God just really did open door after open door after open door. And I'm like, well, I guess it's time to walk through these, And I was confident in that decision. And that's really where my faith came in, because you know, working with the team that I did was not free,
Right.
and it was the largest investment that I ever made in a project like that. And I didn't have the money just sitting there. But, you know, again, as somebody who's, my faith is paramount to everything else, like God was telling me to do it. And that kind of obedience and stepping through those doors in that way, I think is something that, you only really understand with practice and with that relationship. But it was an order. Like, I hear you, let's go, we're doing it. That's where my confidence comes from, is if God's telling me to do it, I have to know that the way is prepared and the steps are ordered and that there will be provision. And I can rest in that. Doesn't make it any easier.
Right.
I was still the one who had to like dedicate time to write, and I was still the one that had to do it. You know what I mean? But it was like, it felt good that I was sure in the decision, and then I could see it through.
Right. So it's like I'm just kind of pulling the thread here of like, you knew it was the right next step. You didn't necessarily know how it was going to happen in terms of paying for the program, getting it done. You had a lot on your plate. It's not like you just had all this free time and a lake house that you were going to go to and write this book, right? It wasn't like that.
Sounds amazing.
Right? It does.
One day.
Right. Maybe one day. But like, you knew that the next step, you knew, okay, this is it. And you knew the effort required, or you had some sort of sense of what the effort required was going to be. And you said, yes,
Yeah.
I'm going to put forth that effort and do it. And one of the things that you just brought up was that you thought about this for a really long time and did not do it and got sick of hearing yourself talk about it, which I love.
So true. So true.
But you found what I like to refer to as the level of accountability that you needed. When you found, okay, I've talked about this for way too long and I have not done it myself. I needed another layer of accountability, and you found a program. And oftentimes that is investing in your financial resources and certainly your time. So how did you, if someone is thinking about that, because a lot of people are like, I'm good with accountability. I know it. I'm good. Or I can just find a buddy.
Yeah.
What was investing in accountability, even though that's not necessarily what it was called? It was a program to help you write your book, but that's what it was. How did that feel, and how did you navigate that?
So I think I have to say too that part of this was, I thought that I could do like everything on my own, right? Like, and that stems from, and a lot of people listening, I know you guys get this, like, we grow up in these situations where we feel, again, isolated. We maybe had to grow up too fast in certain areas of our lives. Maybe we've been abandoned, by people who love us, and we just have to figure it out, right? We have to work really hard to figure these things out. So I carried that with me into my adult life and had a terrible time asking for help or delegating or spending money in a way that would help launch me forward. So when I met Bill, who owns Story Builders, and I learned about their expertise on top of the accountability aspect, it was just like a no-brainer. I'm like, wow, I can not only pay these people to help make my book the best that it can be, but it's a like full circle, start to finish process. So it required me to really humble myself to be like, hey, Becca, how long is it really going to take for us to learn how to self-publish a book and design, to make, like, do I really want to deal with this? I don't need to be an expert on everything. And I used to think that I had to. I used to think I had to do everything alone, which is like, ironically, the exact opposite of what I've been telling people in the village for the past decade. But I just, I'm like, I could keep trying to do this by myself, or I can start to trust that other people will help me. And that was a way deeper wound that I'm still trying to heal, trusting people and letting people into my life on an intimate level. And for anyone who ever decides to write a book, these people have read like my journal. And, I'm like crying on Zoom. Like this is intense work, to bring this kind of stuff onto the page. So it was that mix, right, of me finally saying, you know what, Becca, you don't have to do this by yourself. If there's one thing that's worth doing, it's getting all of this out into this book, because this thing has the ability to impact people and to help me refine my message, So it was a total leap, though. It was a total leap, and I don't feel any different than anybody else. Like you said, I didn't get like a large sum of money. I didn't get a bunch of time off work. I'm still a mom. I'm like, these other things didn't stop. It was shifted my priorities and I did what God told me to do. I still can't believe that, like, I still can't believe it's done.
I know. It's like in my hands.
No, look at that picture. Oh
I
my
love
gosh.
it. So good. Well, I cannot thank you enough for sharing
Yeah.
all of this today, for putting everything into the book. And it's been just such a pleasure to be your friend, cheering you on along,
Thank you.
along this journey, and to hold your book in my hand. And I'm just so excited. And I know for whatever is to come, right? Whatever doors you kick down and open for you.
We're kicking them down. I need to get a t-shirt. Let's kick down
I'll be
these
the
doors.
first one to wear that shirt. Kicking down the doors. I love it because it's true.
Oh my
No one's
gosh.
just, maybe there are people that have wide open doors. I have to believe for my own sanity that those people have wide open doors in certain circumstances, but other doors are like nailed shut for them. I think we all have a mix of both, and we have to kick down the doors we want to be opened when we want them to be open. So I loved that. I'll wear that shirt with pride once you have it. But I know everyone's going to want to grab their copy of the book and learn more from you, connect with you. Can you tell everyone where to find you?
Absolutely. So my website is ladybec.com, LADYBEC.com. And then the book is actually on Amazon. That's the best place to go snag a copy. And the Audible version is also available. So so excited about that.
I love that you narrated it. It's
Me too.
so great.
I wasn't sure in the moment. That's a prime example of like, I was really confident going into that decision. And then like 9 hours into recording, I'm like, maybe I see why people use AI. I see why we're cloning our voices now. I get it. But
well,
no,
I
think
have
it's
not
great.
read mine. I have not narrated mine. And that is one of the things that I'm still thinking about doing. And so I'll have to be talking to you when it happens.
And you have a great voice for it. So I would
you.
love to listen to you.
Well, I guess I need to hunker down and start reading this book out loud. So everyone can go to ladybec.com and see all of the good stuff. Is there anything else you'd like to leave people with today?
I guess I would just say, if you're feeling stuck and lonely, like take a deep breath and scroll through your phone. Social media might not be the best place. Your text messages, like the people who love you, realize that you're not. Like get that intrusive, negative self-talk, those intrusive thoughts, just drive them out, because that's the thing that we all have to battle forever. And you're stronger than you think. You are stronger than you think. You are not alone. Really, like it takes a few small baby steps, like that's where you have to start. Don't paralyze yourself with these terrible thoughts and thinking that you have to do these, like move these huge mountains. You know what I mean? It really starts with something small. So be nice to yourself. Realize that you're not alone. You're not the only one going through this. It's a real thing. But once you start to get those little baby steps and that momentum going, it's going to get you the confidence that you need.
Perfectly said.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. Know that you're not alone and reach out and ask for help. I'll add that on there because you said it so wonderfully earlier of so many of us are so terrible at asking for help, but to send that text message or to make the phone call or to send the email, whatever it is, like get the support that you need in whatever it is that you're trying to go after.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Bec, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's been so wonderful to
so
talk to you
fast.
today. Thank you for being here.
Yeah. Thank you, Amanda. Awesome.
And for everyone listening, thank you for spending time with us. And until next time, give yourself permission to take action, even when it's hard, and grace along the way. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks. Bye.